The rope was too tight around his neck. Jack saw that before anything else. The dog was being dragged across the dirt lot by a heavyset man who wasn't slowing down for anything. Not for the animal's legs buckling beneath him, not for the way his head hung so low it nearly scraped the ground, not for the sound his paws made when they failed to find footing and he was simply pulled forward through the mud. The crowd at the edge of the Harlan Creek sale yard had formed a loose half-circle, and some of them were laughing. Someone called out that the animal wasn't worth the rope he was tied to. Someone else said the kindest thing left was to put him down before morning. Jack Thompson stood perfectly still in the middle of all of it. He had been on his way to the exit. Feed purchased, errands done, the drive home already mapped in his head. He was a man who moved with purpose and didn't linger. 22 years as a Navy SEAL had made him that way, efficient, contained, always moving toward the next necessary thing. But then the dog lifted his head. Just barely, just enough, and he looked directly at Jack with eyes that were sunken and full of pain, but still there, still holding. Whatever was behind them hadn't given up yet. Jack had worn that look before, in places he never named anymore, in moments he carried alone. He had been exactly that, emptied of everything except the refusal to stop. He recognized it the way you recognize something that was once your own. He changed direction. Welcome back to Jack and Rex Tales, where every story reminds us that the bravest thing a person can do is stop when everything in the world is telling them to keep walking. Jack Thompson had lived on the edge of Harlan Creek for 3 years. The town was small enough that newcomers were noticed, and quiet enough that a man who didn't volunteer much about himself could go a long time without being pressed. That suited Jack fine. A modest house, a wood stove, a pension that covered what he needed if he was careful. He had Danny, too, 9 years old, the son of a neighbor woman named Clara, who had passed the previous spring. No father, no family close enough to matter. The boy had started appearing at Jack's door after school in early June, and Jack had never once told him to stop. By August, Danny had a drawer in the guest room and a hook by the back door for his backpack. Neither of them had said a word about it. Jack crouched down in the dirt beside the dog and looked at him carefully. Protruding ribs, dull matted coat, a trembling in the legs that hadn't stopped since the man let go of the rope. He stood and faced the man. "How much?" The man looked him over with a smirk. "Whatever's in your pocket. He won't see morning anyway." Jack counted what he had, most of what remained until his January pension. He held it out without hesitation. Someone in the crowd laughed. Someone said something about veterans and lost causes. Jack was already crouching back down, one hand moving slowly along the dog's side, feeling each rib beneath the matted fur. "Okay," he said quietly, in the voice he had learned to use in very dark places when keeping everyone calm was the only thing that mattered. "I've got you. We're going home." The dog didn't resist. He leaned the full weight of what was left of him against Jack's arm and closed his eyes. Jack made a bed in the entryway from folded blankets, got the wood stove burning hot, and began the slow work of keeping something alive that had been treated as if it weren't worth keeping. Warm broth, careful handling, patient silence. He woke twice each night to check that the dog was still breathing. Every time he heard the slow exhale, he let out one of his own. Danny came home from school the next afternoon and went straight to the entryway without taking off his coat. He sat on the floor beside the dog and looked at him for a long moment. "What's his name?" he asked. "Doesn't have one yet," Jack said from the doorway. Danny was quiet for a moment. "He looks like he's been through a war." Jack said nothing. He watched the boy settle in and begin talking to the dog in the low, unhurried way children talk to things they understand need gentleness. About school, about the cold outside, about a hawk he had seen on the fence post on the road home. The dog lay still with his ears raised, listening with his whole body. Dr. Carol Sims drove out 2 days later. She examined the dog carefully and thoroughly, and the longer she looked, the quieter she became. When she finally straightened up, she took a slow breath. "He was beaten," she said. "The scarring on his flank didn't come from any accident. There are healed rib fractures, old ones, badly set, which means no one treated them when they happened." She paused and gently turned the dog's left ear outward. "And Jack, look at this." Faded but still legible, a tattoo, a registration number, and beneath it a small military insignia. Jack crouched down and looked at it for a long time without speaking. "Someone did this," Dr. Sims said quietly, "to a dog that served this country." Jack put his hand on the dog's head with a steadiness that cost him something. "Will he live?" he asked. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but whatever chance he has is here." Jack nodded once. He named him Rex that evening. Solid, simple, earned. The weeks that followed moved slowly and deliberately, the way real healing always does. Jack kept the routines tight, broth and warmth and the same quiet presence every morning and every night. He had learned in another life that you cannot push recovery. You can only show up for it until the day it shows up back. Rex changed in small, steady increments. The trembling stopped. He began lifting his head when Jack came in. Then one afternoon, Danny arrived home to find Rex standing in the entryway, unsteady, wide-legged, but standing. The smile that crossed the boy's face was the kind Jack hadn't seen on him since before his mother got sick. By November, Rex was walking the yard on his own, his coat smooth and dark, his body filled out and strong. One gray morning, Jack stepped outside and felt something press firmly against his leg. Rex was leaning against him, looking out at the yard, calm and certain, as if this were simply where he had always meant to be. Jack stood with his hand on the dog's back and didn't move for a long time. Some things don't need words. Some things are just warmth and weight, and the quiet knowledge that something broken has found its way back. Winter arrived overnight, not gradually, but all at once, 2 feet of snow and roads that disappeared by morning. 3 days into it, Danny got sick. It started as a chill and a low fever, manageable at first, but by the 4th morning the fever hadn't broken, and his breathing had changed in a way that made the back of Jack's neck go cold. Ruth, his neighbor, a steady and capable woman who had been checking on Danny since Clara passed, sat by the boy's bed and met Jack's eyes across the room. "He needs antibiotics, Jack. Real ones. I've done everything I can do here." "Millfield?" Jack said. "Past the ridge. Road's been closed since Tuesday. Yakov tried his truck this morning and got stuck before the bend." Jack stood at the window and looked at the snow, still coming down, slow and heavy and indifferent. He looked at the ridge buried white in the distance and calculated what his body could manage, the way he had been trained to calculate in conditions designed to make calculation impossible. Then he looked at Rex. Rex was already standing at the door. They went out at 9:30 in the evening. The wind moved through the ridge gap with a sharpness that cut through Jack's heaviest coat within the first quarter mile. Rex moved ahead through the drifts, breaking the surface, finding the firmest ground with an instinct Jack had already learned to trust completely. He kept his eyes on Rex and kept moving. The first mile was manageable. Jack knew this land by 3 years of walking it. Every rise and turn lived in his body the way old roots do. But past the first mile, the wind picked up, and the flashlight caught nothing but falling white. The road disappeared. Jack navigated by memory and by the steady, dark shape of Rex moving ahead of him through the snow. Then Rex stopped, completely and suddenly, all 4 feet planted, body rigid. Jack took one more step, and Rex turned sharply into him, pressing his full weight against Jack's legs and pushing him back. Jack trained the flashlight forward. The snow ahead was smooth, perfectly, unnaturally smooth, the kind of smooth that means nothing solid is beneath it. The bridge over the creek. The drifts had buried the railing and the road edge entirely. One more step, and Jack would have gone into the ravine in the dark. He stood at the edge of it and breathed. "Good boy," he whispered. Rex looked up at him once, steady, calm, certain, then turned left and moved in a careful arc around the edge, finding solid ground with each deliberate step. Jack followed him exactly, placing his feet where Rex had placed his. They found the road on the far side and kept moving. They were within a quarter-mile of Millfield when the wolves came out of the trees. 3 shapes on the left, materializing from the tree line without sound, then 2 more on the right. They moved slowly and with patience, closing the ground between the forest and the road in a wide, unhurried arc. Jack had no weapon, a flashlight, cold hands, and what remained of his strength after 2 miles through a blizzard. Rex stopped walking. He didn't growl or lunge or show any panic. He simply turned to face the nearest wolf, lowered his head, and became absolutely still. The stillness of something that has been in enough dangerous moments to understand that stillness is sometimes the most powerful thing available. Jack had known men with that quality. Rex simply was one. The lead wolf stopped. It stood in the snow and looked at Rex across 15 feet of silence. Rex looked back without blinking, without shifting, without giving a single inch. Then he planted his feet wider and made a sound, low from deep in his chest, felt more than heard, and struck the frozen ground once with his right paw, deliberate, unhurried, certain. The lead wolf stared for one long moment. Then it turned and walked back into the trees. The others followed one by one until the road was empty and quiet, and there was nothing on either side but falling snow and the sound of Jack's own breathing. He put his hand on Rex's back, one firm press, and they walked on toward the lights. The pharmacist came to the door in his bathrobe with an irritated expression that lasted exactly as long as it took Jack to say the words "sick child" and 4 days. After that, the man moved quickly and without complaint. Jack tucked the medicine inside his coat against his chest, and they turned back into the dark. The return was harder. The cold had worked through everything by then, and Jack's hands had gone past pain into the dull numbness that he knew from experience was serious. He focused on Rex ahead of him, and on the weight of the medicine against his chest, and on Danny's face, and he kept moving. They reached the house as the sky shifted from black to the first pale gray of early morning. Jack came through the back door and found Ruth in the kitchen chair, awake, a cold cup of coffee in her hands. She looked at his face, at the frost on his collar, the color of his skin, the way he held his hands, and she stood without a word. He took the medicine from inside his coat and held it out. She looked at him for just a moment, the way people look when no words are large enough. Then she took it and went to the boy. Jack sat down on the entryway floor. Rex lay beside him immediately, pressing his warm side flush against Jack's, and they stayed like that while the house warmed around them and the sky outside slowly turned to gold. Danny recovered over the following days. Ruth nursed them both, because by that first evening, Jack's own fever had arrived, and his hands needed more care than he would admit. They healed in their separate rooms, while the snow outside softened and the roads slowly reappeared. The morning Danny was well enough to go outside, he didn't stop for his hat or lace his boots properly. He went straight across the yard to the stable, where Rex had taken to sleeping, wrapped both arms around the dog's neck, pressed his face into the dark fur, and held on without saying a word. Rex stood completely still, solid and warm and present. He waited for as long as the boy needed. Jack watched from the porch doorway with a coffee mug in his hands and didn't look away. 2 weeks later, on a clear, cold afternoon, Jack made a phone call. He had been looking at Rex's ear for days, the faded tattoo, the registration number, the insignia beneath it. He had written the number on a piece of paper and carried it in his shirt pocket without picking up the phone. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for, maybe just the right kind of quiet. It took 3 transfers and most of an hour. When he finally reached a retired handler named Garrett, who maintained military working dog records, the man went silent after Jack read him the number. That unit, Garrett said slowly, was attached to SEAL Team operations out of Virginia, deployed 2009 through 2013. Jack sat down at the kitchen table. He had operated alongside that team, 2 deployments, places that had no names he ever used out loud anymore, nights so dark and so far from anything ordinary that he had spent 3 years in Harlan Creek building enough distance from them just to breathe properly. Rex had been in that darkness with men like Jack, doing work that no one outside of it ever fully understood. Jack set the phone down and sat in the quiet kitchen. Rex came and put his head on Jack's knee without being asked, the way he always seemed to know when he was needed. Jack put his hand on the dog's head and closed his eyes. He would never know the full story, but he thought about what it meant. That out of everywhere Rex could have ended up, out of every road that could have been traveled, this dog had found his way to a small-town sale yard and looked up from the dirt and met the eyes of the one man in that crowd who recognized exactly what he was looking at. Some bonds don't begin the day you find each other. They begin long before. In dark places, in hard years, in the shared language of those who have given everything and come home carrying the weight of it in silence. Rex exhaled slowly beneath his hand. Outside, Danny was in the yard throwing a stick through the bright winter air, laughing at the way Rex launched himself through the snow, all power and joy and dark coat flashing against the white, the past entirely behind him and the present entirely his. Jack watched through the kitchen window and felt something settle in his chest that had been restless for a very long time. There is a kind of courage that never makes the news. It doesn't stand at a podium. It shows up at a sale yard on a cold afternoon and stops walking when everything in the world says keep going. It goes out into a blizzard with nothing but a flashlight and a dog and a child's name held tight in the back of its mind. It stands at the edge of a cliff it cannot see and trusts what is moving ahead of it in the dark. Jack Thompson had that courage. Rex had carried it through things that would have broken most, and brought it through the other side and offered it, quietly, to a man and a boy who needed it more than they knew. Danny was learning it now, not from being told, but from watching, From mornings in a snowy yard with a dog who had survived everything and still ran for the stick without hesitation. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that loyalty is still real, that broken things still have so much left to give, that the quietest moments of courage are often the most important ones, then you belong here. Subscribe to Jack and Rex Tales and stay with us. Every story we tell is for the people who still believe that showing up for others is the most important thing a person can do, because it always has been. And it always will be. This story honors the real and often overlooked service of military working dogs. Rex's tattoo tells us he was not simply an animal. He was a veteran who served in danger alongside American soldiers and came home without the recognition he had earned. His story is a quiet reminder that canine veterans deserve the same dignity and gratitude we give the men who served beside them. It speaks honestly to the veteran experience. Jack's silence, his deliberate simplicity, the careful distance he keeps from the places he never names, these reflect the real and recognizable reality of post-service life. The story suggests that purpose and healing can arrive in unexpected forms, and that the instinct to protect and serve does not end with the uniform. It shows the healing power of the bond between children and animals. Danny's daily conversations with Rex and his first act upon recovery being to go straight to the dog, these reflect something deeply true. Animals offer a presence and acceptance that reaches places words cannot, and for children carrying grief, that bond can be quietly transformative. It celebrates ordinary community heroism. Ruth sitting through the night, the pharmacist opening his door without complaint. These small human acts are the foundation of every community worth living in, and they deserve to be seen. And at its heart, this story carries one lasting truth, that worth cannot be determined by condition. Rex, at his lowest, appeared to have nothing left. He had everything left. The same is true of any person or creature that has been written off too soon. Do not walk away from the thing that looks back at you and has not yet given up.